I'm Mr. MegaManFan. Like, share, comment, and subscribe. You know all the things to do. This is a pretty wacky thing. It is a ColecoVision adapter for the Sega Master System. You heard me right. This is the equivalent of the power base converter to play Sega Master System games on your Genesis, except we're playing ColecoVision games on a Sega Master System. And ironically enough, since I just mentioned that, the instructions that come with this say it won't work on a power base converter, so don't even try. And I can tell you right now why that would be. There's no Z80 processor in the power base converter. Now, there might be one in the Genesis, but when you're using it to pass through Master System games, it's not accessing that. So you're not able to take advantage of it if it is there. However, this is interfacing directly with the Master System, so it can take advantage of that. And since both the ColecoVision and the Master System use a Z80 processor, it's possible. But there are caveats. Now, the first one is that colors are not going to be one-to-one. It has to interpret them for the Sega Master System palette, so they're not going to look quite the same, and in some cases, they might actually look really odd. And the second problem you're going to have is that there is no numeric keypad on a Sega Master System controller or anything else that you can plug into the 9-pin port that will work with a Master System. So how you get around that is you have to hold down the pause button and use a specific directional input that is recognized as a numeric keypad press. So if you're not sitting directly next to your Sega Master System while you're using this, it's going to be a problem. There were a few games that I tried that outright refused to accept anything as a numeric keypad input, even though I was doing it exactly as described on the back cover / instructions of the Coleco adapter. Like Frogger, for instance. Should have been the easiest thing in the world. You shouldn't even need to hit a numeric keypad combo. You should just be able to hit fire and start a game, but no keypad combo I could use with Frogger would do anything. It would sit on the demo screen forever and ever, and the only keypad inputs I could make would either go fast or slow, but none of them would actually start the game. They would just change the options for the speed you wanted to play Frogger at. So I gave up on it. The heist didn't work either. I'm not sure why, but again, it stayed in the demo mode no matter what keypad presses I used. Now with James Bond 007, it worked just fine, but I'm going to cut the footage short here because I normally don't worry about flashing lights causing anybody to have epileptic seizures, but in James Bond 007, they're pretty egregious, and I don't know if that's because it's playing on a Master System instead of a ColecoVision, but it was so bad I opted to not include it in this video. And some of the footage here I ended up cutting short just because I could have played it all day. Montezuma's Revenge being a really good example of what I'm talking about because I played this game religiously on Apple II computers as a kid, and funnily enough, there is an actual licensed Sega Master System version of this, so you could argue I'm either playing the same thing or potentially a lesser version of the same thing. But to me, it looks and feels the same as I remember playing it from childhood on Apple IIs, so I feel like they're all cut from the same cloth. As long as somebody makes Montezuma's Revenge ported the right way, they should all play pretty much the same, and this one definitely does. It's such a simple premise, but it's so well done. You have to go around collecting keys of a certain color that match doors of a certain color, and they gate off areas where you can collect treasure. And there are monsters you have to avoid, and occasionally there are things you can pick up that will eliminate one monster, but generally speaking, you're defenseless. You avoid them, or you jump over them, or you go around them in some way. but you're always seeking to collect all the treasures in a room and avoid the enemies if at all possible. It's a great game. And speaking of great games, here's Mr. Do's Castle. This might be a game you wouldn't think would port well to ColecoVision, but honestly, it's one of my favorite versions of this game. A much forgotten game compared to Mr. Do itself. You don't see people talk about Mr. Do's Castle very much. But again, simple premise done well. There are monsters coming your way, and there are blocks you can knock out to either squash them or to drop them down a level. Either way, you're trying to collect all the keys and get rid of all the monsters, or at least not get hit by them. And occasionally, you'll get a bonus where they turn into letters and you can collect them just like in the original Mr. Do. So there are also swinging ladders that move from one side to the other, as you'll see here. So you have to keep that in mind. Sometimes you can use those to keep enemies away from you, and sometimes you can use those to traverse the area to get from one side to the other and get what you want. And as you can see, they just turned into the bonus letters here. Although in the amount of time they were in bonus, I wasn't able to collect any of them. But Mr. Do's Castle is really good, works well on the converter for ColecoVision games to Sega Master System. The colors look right, the gameplay feels right, and I would recommend this one in general, not just the ColecoVision version, but just as a fun arcade game. Next up on the list, we've got Popeye. And this is another game I spent an inordinate amount of time playing as a kid. Arcade in particular. There was a truck stop that my parents liked to go to for dinner sometimes, and the convenience store next door to the truck stop had a Popeye arcade machine. And trust me when I say I was in heaven. I would rather stand there in the convenience store spending my quarters playing Popeye than actually eating the dinner at the truck stop. I could have cared less about anything on the menu. I just wanted to play Popeye. I wonder if there was ever a Commodore 64 port of it, and if so, why did I never get that as a kid? Because if there was a home port of it, I would have played it on my Commodore computer just as much as I played it at that truck stop. If you're not familiar with this game, pretty simple premise. Olive Oil is dropping hearts, and you want to collect them before they get to the bottom. If they sink into the ocean, that is bad news. And also there's a hag who throws bottles at you. If the bottles hit you, that's bad news. And Bluto, he's trained to stop you from collecting all of her hearts. If he gets a hold of you, that's bad news too. So you have to avoid all the enemies, collect all the hearts, and occasionally you can grab a can of spinach to power up Popeye, in which period of time that the spinach lasts, you can actually attack Bluto or Brutus or whatever you want to call him, depending on what you're reading. But yes, in Popeye, spinach makes him super strong, so he can knock out the big oaf. But it only lasts for a limited amount of time, and you only get one can per level. And what you collect in a level changes. In this one, it's hearts. In the next one, it's musical notes. But you're always trying to collect something and fill up that house at the upper left-hand side of the screen. You can see that the hearts are stacking up as I'm collecting them. And when the house is full, the level ends and you move on to the next level. Simple premise, fun game. I really enjoy Popeye. I don't think I've played a bad home version of it. My favorite probably would be the Nintendo Entertainment System, but ColecoVision is a close second. I wouldn't say the colors are exactly right on the Sega Master System. In fact, Popeye might look a little puke green when he's powered up by the spinach here, but I think it works okay. Q*bert, that's another one that I had to stop myself from playing for too long here in this video. And I believe this is another one that also has an official port on Sega Master System, so don't know if you'd really want to use the ColecoVision adapter to play Q*bert, but it's a decent version of Q*bert. Also a very easy to understand game. It's a pyramid with blocks that you've got to change color by jumping on them. And in some levels, you have to change their color more than once by jumping on them a second or even a third time. And also, there are levels where you can undo the color by jumping on them, so then you have to figure out a pattern where you can jump and not undo all of your hard work. And of course, they put enemies in there like a snake, but you can lead the snake over the edge by jumping on a platform off the edge of the pyramid, and he'll follow you to his doom. There are more enemies the higher you progress in the game. Anyway, Star Wars, the arcade game on ColecoVision, which the fact that they made this work on any home systems, Atari 2600, ColecoVision, whatever home console of the day, the fact they could get this arcade game working on it always impressed the heck out of me. What I'm not a fan of is the inverted flight stick controls. Down is up, up is down. It's really hard to remember that when you're trying to shoot the fireballs the way it's telling you to. But if you survive long enough, then you get to run the trench of the Death Star and try to blow it up. So it's a good game. It's a great arcade game, and it's a fun conversion. Next on our list is Toon Common, which I'm probably saying wrong, but this is another one that I've played on many different things other than just ColecoVision. I do like the ColecoVision version, but it tends to jut a little when you're going left and right. The scrolling isn't super smooth. I don't remember it being really smooth on any version, but on ColecoVision, it's a little bit noticeable. I'm also trying to remember if all versions only limit you to firing left and right. I think that might have been one of the gimmicks of the game, but I'm not 100% sure on that. If there was a way to fire up and down, I couldn't figure it out. So I had to just wait until enemies were on my horizontal path and then take them out. But in Toon Common, you're collecting all the treasures in a level and getting to the exit, without, of course, getting killed by any of the monsters that keep spawning and respawning. And this is one of the places where not being able to shoot up was a real detriment because I got pinned and couldn't get away. So if that's the way it is in all versions of Toon Common, I just don't remember because it's been so long since I played it. Our next game up is one of the rarer, not rare like an upside down bicycle stamp, but definitely not common Q*bert games called Q*bert's Cubes. If you have it on Atari or ColecoVision, it's not one that you're going to see every day at a thrift or a game store. You might only find it from an eBay seller or a upper tier retro gaming store that has some good stuff in their glass display case. And that's because this came out pretty late on either of these systems, before the video game crash in the US market of the 1980s, and it wasn't a super popular sequel to Q*bert in the first place. People didn't really want to rotate 3D cubes into tic-tac-toe for Q*bert, so it didn't really catch on, and the port didn't really catch on as well. Now, Gateway to Apshai sort of works on the Sega Master System, and by that I mean there doesn't seem to be a way for me to brandish my weapon. I can go around collecting items and treasures, but if there was a way to fight back against the monsters that are attacking me, I couldn't find it. This may also be a limitation of it being designed for both ColecoVision and the Atom computer, which is noted on the cartridge and on the title screen, but if there's a key press that I'm supposed to do with a keyboard that would have allowed me to use the weapon, I couldn't figure it out. And if there was a key to do it with the pause for the numeric keypad, I couldn't find that either. So I don't recommend Gateway to Apshai, even though it's a fun game. I do recommend War Room, which, if I'm being honest, is a pretty blatant ripoff of Missile Command. You're shooting down these incoming nukes that are trying to take out major cities in the United States. I suppose the difference would be you're scrolling across a larger playfield as opposed to just protecting 6 bases at the bottom of the screen and missiles that are falling down toward you as opposed to flying in onto cities. But it's pretty much the same premise. You get the idea. You're scrolling to fire the crosshairs at whatever's coming at you. And I like this take on Missile Command. I think it's actually pretty innovative. And for ColecoVision, it was a pretty outstanding idea. I mean, you have to consider the year and time it came out in, and it's still fun to play today. So I do recommend War Room if you like Missile Command style games. And I do recommend this ColecoVision adapter for Sega Master System. It's pretty wacky to be playing Coleco games on your SMS, but when you consider they both had a Z80 processor inside, a Zilog 80, whatever you choose to call it, it makes perfect sense that it would be able to play them. It just needs a little help with a cartridge adapter and some clever programming.